Hello, all benders and non-benders, and welcome back to Avatar Generations. And today, we're going to talk about what is quite possibly the most complicated part of the game, which are the arts sets. Now, what are art sets? If you've played other games, you might refer to them as artifacts, or mods, or gear, or insert mobile game terminology here. It's pretty standard. What the arts compose of are these items. These 6 items that go on the character. 6 bases, 6 different arts. These boost your stats and grant abilities based on the set that you have equipped. Now, first we're going to talk about probably what's the simplest part. The simplest part is the set bonus you get from each set. There are 6 main ones, however there are more than 6 sets. But for now we're just going to talk about these main ones, and then we'll briefly go over the more rare ones as well. You have 6 you can get from the activities Arts Expedition. You have this offensive arts attack set. It increases your attack by different increments depending on the set, with 40% at the 6th set and increasing your attack by a percentage when your HP is below 25%. You may notice that it has different set values. You can mix and match these things. You can go for a 2 set of attack and a 4 set of something else, or a 2 set of 3 different sets if you want those smaller stats, but you want to be more diverse in the stats you have. So that's good to keep in mind. We have the speed set. At max set, it increases speed by 30% and increases speed of your allies by a small percentage when you die. We have the defense set here, increases defense by a certain percentage, and at 6th set, permanently increases the defense of all allies and decreases the defense of all enemies when your HP goes below a certain threshold. This can be kind of nice for like your bulkier heroes. These are much more offensive based, with attack, of course, being more damage and speed being take more turns sooner. This one, obviously, much more defensively based. If we go down to the survival arts expedition stages, we have increased crit rate, nice and simple, 35% crit rate. We have HP. Some characters do scale on HP, so this can be helpful. This increases your HP by a percentage, and at the 6th set bonus, you get a boost to your HP when you go below that 25% threshold. You'll notice a lot of these seem to trigger at 25%. So if you go on 25%, you basically get more health that the enemy has to chew through. And then the counter set, gain a percentage chance to counter. This one's a little more complicated because it doesn't technically boost a stat necessarily. It just boosts your chance to counter. Normally set at 0. You get, I believe, a 35% chance to counter if you're in a counter state. This can add to that. This will boost that up to 65% if you're at a max set. And then if you're under that 25% threshold, you'll get a 100% chance to counter if the enemy attacks you and you survive a hit. The kicker is surviving when you're that low. And then if we're going to look at this last one here, we have grants immunity for 3 turns to start a battle. This makes you unable to be affected by debuffs, turn meter reduction, and things like that. And then if you die, you will actually increase the resistance of each ally by a percentage. That increases their chance of resisting those debuffs I just mentioned. This pink one here is Lifesteal. This one can be very important and helpful if you do have a character that has a decent chance of countering, or if you just are finding yourself strapped for health regularly. This can be very helpful, gives you a percentage of healing for the damage you deal, and increases your damage if you're below 25%. The damage increase is interesting because basically that means you will heal more. You won't proc that very often because if this thing is doing its job correctly, you shouldn't be under 25% very often, but it's still good to keep in mind. And then this one just increases crit damage. No complicated wording there. Those are the three main ones you can get. There are two more sets. One is the event set that you get from the Tale of Two Lovers shop. I've already bought them, as you can see, but you can get one set of the Scroll of Lovers set, which I put on Suki. So take a look at Suki here. It actually gives some lifesteal, capping at 25% on this one as opposed to the 35% of the other one. However, this one has a supportive effect, where you will heal another ally with the lowest HP by 5% of their max HP. So what you're losing in a little bit of healing for yourself, you're gaining in healing for your ally. This triggers even on counters. I have noticed this to be immensely helpful. The last set I want to briefly touch on, you can't actually get this from the Arts Expeditions, is this crit rate set here. This will give you crit increase 25% on a 6 set, and gives you a 100% chance to critically strike on the caster's turn. What this means is, if you're not on this 2-turn cooldown, your attack will crit. This can be helpful, especially for multi-strike abilities. A good example would be Zuko's advanced skill. If you can line up those cooldowns, it would make your whole attack crit. Can be kind of nice. However, this would not apply to counters, and it would not apply every single turn. It does have a cooldown, so whether or not that's worth it to you, that's a decision that you can make for yourself. I personally would rather go for a 2 set of the other crit rate set and mix in something else, me personally, but maybe we'll get some tech later on where this actually really helps. This is found in the Razor Reef location, which you can unlock after you complete Shengguang. So that's kind of where we're at here. As you may have noticed, I've only just gotten here. I don't know if there's other nodes here, but if there are that grant this set, or maybe even grant additional sets, I'm not sure, then feel free to go through those and figure out what works best. So that's all the sets that at least I know of. That is the least complicated part. Now we're going to start getting into the more complicated stuff. First thing I want to discuss is art rarity. You may notice these arts are 3-star. Some arts are 2-star. Some arts are 1-star. The Arts Expedition missions can grant up to the 3-star depending on which stage you're doing. It kind of makes sense here, but I'll iterate it anyway. Good words, good words. The 3-star has the highest of these 3 rarities when it comes to stats. The stats will increase more for these. These are cheaper to power up, but you will not get the same level of stats you can get for these. As you can see, I've got this one completely powered up here, and these are the stats you have access to. Another difference is the number of stars you have determines how many substats the artifact comes with at level 1. A 3-star artifact will come with 2 substats. In this case, it was speed and attack. A 2-star will come with 1 substat, and a 1-star will not come with any substats. There are 4-star and 5-star artifacts, those being, of course, the cream of the crop. You can only get those as a rare drop from boss fights. Especially if you're early game, and maybe even late game too. Don't worry too much about that. I would personally say go for these 3-star ones. Because, again, the others, the more rare ones, only drop from boss fights, which you can only do each stage one at a time, and they will only drop from the higher ones too. You're not going to see a lot of those very often. They are a privilege, not a right. So, I'd say if you can get yourself a really good 3-star set, you're doing good for yourself. Next, we're going to talk about the stats. The stats are where you're really going to start having to be more picky. And I'm actually going to pull up some notes here, because that is how odd these stats are. They are different based on which part you have, and that's not even talking about the substats. Now, looking at each of these, as you can see, 6 different arts. The offensive art will always have a primary stat of attack. The primary stat is here. This top row, it will always be attack. There's a flat amount of attack. The vital arts will always be HP. So far, so simple. Top stat, always HP. The defensive art will always be defense. Okay, easy. Not so bad so far. From this point on, though, is where RNG gets involved. The critical arts actually has a few different options that the top primary stat can be. In this case, I have crit rate. It can also be crit damage, it can be an attack percentage, it can be an HP percentage, or it can be a defense percentage. It is random chance which one you get. It could be any of those. More often than not, it's probably going to be the crit rate that's the most valuable, I would say. But depending on the character or what you're focusing on, it could very well be attack or HP or defense. Really depends on the character, their scalings, or what their purpose is. Looking at the strategic arts, this one has a few options as well. This one can be attack, HP, or defense, so not as crazy as the prior one. In this case, I have an attack percent. It can also be defense or HP. Again, whichever your character prefers. And then finally, we have the swift arts. This one can be speed, attack, HP, or defense. More often than not, I would wager that the speed is going to be the most important, as that allows you to take more turns, but that depends on your character. That is the breakdown of the primary stats. We also want to talk about the secondary stats here. This one is defense. Each art has a secondary stat. Basically, a stat that will increase as you level up. It will not go nearly as high as your primary stat. It's just something a little extra on there. It can be defense, it can be attack, it can be HP. It can also be accuracy, and it can be resistance. Accuracy and resistance applies to your skill effects. One being to increase your chances of applying effects, and the resistance being increasing your chances to resist enemy effects. Can be good for if you have a lot of debuffs, if you're trying to reduce turn meter, that's what that can be helpful for. With the secondary stats, I want to say don't worry about them as much. I mean, like, depending on your character, you kind of do, but it can be really RNG dependent, and honestly, especially with the critical arts here, even getting this top stat can be difficult. So if you get one with crit that you like, but like this one has defense, I'm not sweating over it. It's not gonna change any hearts and minds if you have defense over attack. Even here, you can see the attack stat's not that high, so you don't have to worry about it too much. And finally, we need to talk about substats. We've talked about primary stats, we've talked about secondary stats, now we need to talk about substats. Now if you look down here, there's 4 of them. HP, crit rate, crit damage, defense. Attack and speed can also be down there. What are the substats? How do you get them? Well, as I mentioned before, how many you start out with is determined by your star count. If you had a 5-star art from a boss fight, you would start with 4. 3-star, you start with 3. Or excuse me, 4-star, you start with 3. 5-star, you start with 4. And it goes down from there. When you are powering up your artifacts, or excuse me, your arts, you will get either a new substat or a boost to that substat every 3 levels. With the exception of the first time because you go from 1 to 3, but at level 3, at level 6, at level 9, at level 12, and at level 15, you will either get a new substat or get a boost to an existing substat. It will always give you new substats first, When you're up to 4, it will give you a boost. So that is how substats work. Now, you might even notice here, if you already have substats, when you get like a 3-star, that means you're going to get more boost to those substats in the later levels. So for example, with this particular mask, it has 2. I might get more boosts to crit or defense when I power this thing up after it gets its next 2. If you are lucky enough to get yourself a 5-star artifact, art, one of these days I'm going to stop saying artifacts, Genshin Impact has ruined me. If you get a 5-star art, all of those levels are going to be boosts to the existing stats. You'll see what they are, and you'll get nothing but boosts. And that's the breakdown of the arts. What you want for your character depends on the character, depends on your playstyle, and I'm sure a meta will emerge, especially once Arena becomes a thing. But yeah, that's pretty much the breakdown of it. As far as how much you should care about this, I'm not sure, honestly. It is really early in the game, in the life of the game, to be stressing over RNG and getting what you want. I would really focus on just getting the primary stat you like, honestly. Maybe down the road, if we have more energy or you really want to try and optimize and roll the dice on those artifacts, you can give it a shot. But I would recommend don't get too crazy about it. Get yourself a good 3-star set, and if you do happen to get lucky with a 4 or 5-star art set or really great substats, then great, good for you. But don't stress yourself out over this. It's not worth it to go too crazy over it if you can help it. And that's pretty much it. That is the most complex part of strengthening your characters. And we've just gone over it now, and hopefully you understand it. If you do understand all that, then you probably deserve a degree from whatever school Avatar Generations would be a part of. And that's all I've got for you today. Hope that was helpful, hope it was educational, and I hope, most of all, that it made a lick of sense. So we will see you all later. Hopefully we'll have some new things coming soon. Probably one guide I do want to make is a summoning guide, where we will summon the Dojo Master after getting those last few tickets. Until then, I will see y'all later. Have a good one.